Hey folks, welcome to episode 92 of our Run Club, the podcast. A very special episode today. A little bit of a snowstorm on the day Ray and I typically record. So I thought, since I'm stuck at home, I'd, convince another runner to come on the podcast and talk to me. And that runner happens to be my lovely wife, Christine.
Hello.
Welcome to the podcast, Christine. So what we usually do when we have guests on is we just kind of start off with a kind of origin story of your running career, when you began running, why you began running, and what it kind of means to you. So when did this all start for you, this running thing?
My story's kind of funny. So I always did dance, and then it was funny, when I was in high school, I started running. And before I started running, my dad was like, you should join track. And I was like, no, I don't want to do that. And then my girlfriend was like, we should do track. And I was like, yeah, that sounds great. And my dad was like, what?
That's a typical teenage girl response. So
we joined the track team, and I at first wanted to be a sprinter, and it was very clear that sprinting was not my thing. So then they convinced me to run like the 1500.
Cool.
And that was much better. And then I loved it, and I just kept running. Yeah.
Cool. So you started in high school because your girlfriend asked you to. And then, so did you start like as a freshman, and then?
No. So I did dance, since I was little, and then I was a junior, and it was outdoor track. So I was like, yeah, let's try it. So I did, and I did outdoor track, and then I liked it so much I ran all summer. And I think I stopped dancing senior year. And then I did cross country, and I did indoor, and I did outdoor. And then I went to Rick, and I ran at Rick.
All right, cool. Can you talk a little bit about your transition from like high school running to college running? Was it like completely different or kind of similar, or what?
It was definitely very different. Yeah, we definitely ran like a lot more mileage in college. I remember, too, it was, like, a huge, like, culture shock, because I went to Pontiac, and we, like, only ran trails. And then I remember our first day of college cross-country, and they were like, you're going to cross Mineral Spring Avenue. And I was like, what? And we ran all these tremendously large hills, and there was, like, only 3 girls on my team, so that was pretty intimidating.
In college?
In college.
Oh, okay, yep.
And then I ran a lot with guys, which was pretty intimidating.
Yeah.
So it definitely, like, toughened me up, and I ran a lot more mileage and, like, much more intensive workouts, and I got much faster. Thank goodness. Because I was pretty slow in high school.
It's relative. Slow is relative.
Yeah, it's relative. So I definitely got much better. And I think I ran for 2 years in college, and then, like, my classes didn't really work with, like, the cross-country and track schedule, so I ended up just, like, running for myself, and I still ran, like, 7 days a week, and I ran pretty, like, similar mileage, and I actually got better. And then I just kept running, and then I ran with Roadrunner. After I ran in college, and I just kept running, and I'm still running.
You're still going.
That's my story, and it just seems like my distances just get longer as I go, so it's like,
You're like, I'm going to be a sprinter.
Yeah, I'm going to do 200 meters. Horrible idea.
Yep.
And then I did the 400, and then I did the 1500, and then I did the 3000, and then I did... Oh, yeah, my girlfriend was like, we should do a 10-miler. And I was like, sure. So I did. I'm too easily convinced to do these things.
Yeah, sounds like it.
So we did a 10-miler, and then I did a half marathon. And then someone convinced me to do a marathon.
Well, all right, then.
She was training for Disney, and I was like, she's like, let's run this time. And I was like, all right, let's do it. So then I ran a marathon.
Wow. So next up, what?
That's it. No, I'm done. Marathon, done. That's
ultra,
it.
ultra marathons? No, because...
No, that's it. Yeah.
Gotcha. So what made you kind of stick to it, you know? So, like, you were not open to it at first.
Yeah, I think just because my dad wanted me to.
It was just
I was like, no.
Oh, gotcha. But then you got into it, and so what kind of got you to kind of stick to this running thing?
Yeah. So I'm a pretty routine person. So like when I danced, I was like, I'm gonna dance, and I just danced. And then I tried running, and I liked it because it's like pretty relaxing. So I found it very relaxing, to be honest, and I liked hanging out with my friends.
Yeah.
So I would run with them, and I run alone. And I just found it very relaxing, and I'm a very high energy person, so it kind of like makes me like a normal person.
You like calm down, burn some of that excess energy.
Burn some of that extra energy. Yeah. So I like that, and I like races, and I like running with people, and I like that running like pays off. So if you work hard and you do your long runs and you do your workouts and you do what you need to do, then you get better. Yeah. And I like that, because some sports are not like that.
Right, I'm never going to be very good at basketball.
Right, me neither.
You know?
So, yeah, I love that about running.
Yeah, me too. I think it's one of the rare sports where, like, pretty much anybody can pick it up. You know, we do, like, a beginning runner group, and we have people who have never, ever run before in their whole life that can get out there and do it. You know, if you're physically able to do it, it is one of those sports where if you put in the work and you do your training and you follow a plan and you stick to it and you take care of yourself and you listen to your body,
other stuff.
Yeah, then you can see those gains, which is kind of cool.
Yeah, that's really nice.
Is there like an example that you have of one like training cycle where you saw some particularly good results from sticking to a plan?
Yeah, so I have like, I guess 2 examples. So especially when I made the transition from like high school to college running, like I substantially increased my mileage, and immediately I saw results. Yeah. So I went from running, I think 5 days a week to running 7, which I don't recommend for everybody.
Right.
But for me, it worked really well. And I ran a lot more mileage, and I ran a lot faster, and I got a lot faster.
Yeah.
And for me, like transitioning over to doing a long distance run made a tremendous difference. So I'd say that. And then my other example was when we ran the Philly Marathon. Like I seriously trained for that race for like much too long, probably.
Oh, I remember that, yeah.
But I was really nerdy about it, and I made like my training plans on calendars, and I wrote all my runs in every week, every month, and I made sure I had so many 20s in, and I tortured myself, and I did the tempo runs and long runs, and I had goal paces, and I lifted, and I went to yoga, and I foam rolled, and it worked.
Yeah, right?
Yep.
So you had a good day?
Yeah, it was a good race. It doesn't always work, but especially with a marathon, sometimes it's like, I did everything right, and I just don't know what happened. But that one was pretty good.
That was a good one. Can you, like, talk about that race a little bit? Like, how, like, the experience of it, and, like, because you hadn't done, like, a big-time road race before that, if I remember correctly.
Right,
so it's always been... It had been like track meets and then maybe like a local 5K, 10Ks, maybe halves, but kind of smaller. And I know Philly is big because I was there that day. And I know it's a pretty big race, so I found it a little intimidating myself.
Yeah.
Especially with like, you know, getting to the starting line and making sure I was like ready to go and had enough time to get ready and had enough bathroom time.
That was very stressful.
You know, beforehand. So how was your experience with the like getting to the start and then the actual race itself?
Yeah, so that was a big difference for me, like running a big race. It was nice. Well, it was nice in that there was like crowd support everywhere. So that's not always the case I've heard at marathons. So I really liked how there was crowd support the whole way. Like there was really I would say, really no spots where you were alone.
Right.
And it was nice, too, because there was, like, enough people where you weren't running by yourself. Like, there was always somebody.
Mm-hmm.
But it wasn't, like, after I ran Philly, we did Chicago. And it wasn't like Chicago, in that Chicago I felt like there was too many people because it was even bigger than Philly.
Right.
And I remember, like, when I started Chicago, like, I was trying to run a certain pace.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember there were so many people at that pace, like, I was, like, tripping over people.
Yeah.
And then the pacers weren't really quite accurate, and the watch wasn't working, so I found that really frustrating. But at Philly, I didn't have any of those problems.
Yeah.
So
did you use, like, a pacer at Philly?
I didn't.
No, okay.
I don't even remember seeing the pacers, to be
Gotcha.
honest.
Yeah.
So I just went by my watch, and I had a really, like, solid race plan, and I really trusted my training, and I knew what I wanted to run. And thankfully, for most of Philly, my watch worked. Because that's something you got to be careful of at the big races, like, because the buildings, like, mess up all the satellites and the tracking and everything.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I remember, like, with Philly, I really liked it for trying to run a goal time. I loved the course. It was definitely a little hillier than I had thought, but it was a great race.
So when I ran Philly the same year you ran it, I ended up getting kind of stuck in the crowd. So, like, I probably should have been a little bit further up to the front based on what time I was trying to hit. But I got stuck in the corral because I had to use the bathroom.
Right,
and they were, like, getting ready to start. And so it's kind of funny. I hopped over the fence, which you're not supposed to do. I did too. You're not supposed to do that. And the security guard came over and he's like, hey, you, don't do that. And I'm like, well, I'm already here, so I'm not leaving.
Yeah.
But anyway, I was, like, so far back in the crowd. What I found was it forced me to run a bit slower for the first few miles, which actually kind of helped me out.
That probably did, yeah.
Yeah, so would you have rather done that, or did you kind of even pace, like, even split the whole thing?
So I was a little fast. So for me, like, I had the same issue that I got to the start a little late, so I definitely would be better about getting it earlier. I know, too, that race was tough because I forget what it was. There was some sort of, like, major event that happened right before that race. So I feel like there was, like, extra security. So, like, we gave ourselves plenty of time, but given what had happened, I forget what it was.
It wasn't the Boston Marathon.
No, I think, wasn't it in France? Like, something?
Yeah.
Something happened, and so there was, like, extra security. Like, really, I'd never seen it so over the top.
Yeah.
And, so we got there, and I barely made it to the start, so I also had to use the bathroom. And then I remember there was issues, like, getting in the corrals, and, like, I literally, like, ran to the start, and then it started. But I did make it to my pace guide, because I was aiming for 8-minute pace, so I got right to 8-minute pace. So I started, I went out, I felt good. I think it was flat the first bit. And I think that the watches were slightly off. At that point,
because you were in the
because I remember, like, I was definitely, like, my goal was, like, 8-minute pace, but I was definitely, like, 7:50 for a while. And then I realized I kind of freaked out a little bit because I remember we got to that huge hill, and then I was like, my watch can't be right. And I remember talking to the girl next to me, and she's like, oh, your watch is right. And I was like, oh, that's not good. Because I definitely have, like, I was like 7, like low 7s, which then I was like, calm down, like, you did the training, and I definitely ran, like, around that pace at some training runs, so then I definitely slowed down, and I actually felt really, really good until, like, mile 18 or 21, I think it was 21, and I was like, oh, I felt so good, and now I don't feel so good.
So much, yeah.
And I remember because we had trained to, like, up to 22, so then once I hit, I think it was 21, 22, and everyone's, like, talking about the wall, and I was like, I don't know what they're talking about, and then I was like, oh.
Dude, the wall.
This is what they're talking about.
The wall at the marathon is a whole different wall.
It's like a whole nother thing. Yeah, I never felt that before in any races, any runs, nothing. And so I remember I hit that, and, like, I remember, like, I was on pace to Boston qualify, and then at that point I had fallen back a little bit. And, like, for me, like, I have a congenital heart defect, so I felt that.
Yeah.
So my doctor's like, if you feel that, then slow down. So then I slowed down a little bit, and then I was really bummed because then I just missed qualifying. But that's okay.
Better safe than sorry.
Yes, but I did finish, and I was really happy with it. Was great.
That's awesome.
So I definitely was one of those people who finished and was like, I'm going to do another one.
Yeah. Do you want to talk about the other one? I know it didn't go smoothly.
Oh, man, the other one was awful.
So what's the other one?
So I'm in Chicago,
right.
But I still will do another one yet someday.
Okay, in the future.
Because Chicago was like an
right,
epic
you gotta
fail.
redeem yourself.
Oh my gosh, that was horrible.
So what happened? Why was this race so much different than Philly? Do you feel like you prepared as well for it?
I didn't. So I don't think I should have run Chicago.
Mm-hmm.
Period. End of story.
Yeah.
So for me, I think I was in a very different emotional spot when I ran Chicago. So when I ran Philly, like, everything was going great in my life.
Mm-hmm.
And I ran Philly, I did all the training, I actually worked at a PT clinic, so I used to do all my strength training there. I did all that stuff. I went to yoga, it was wonderful.
Mm-hmm.
And then I ran, after I ran Philly, I was really determined to run another marathon.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it was the year prior, in 2016, and I was like, I'm going to run a marathon, and so I actually had started training then, but we didn't, I don't think I signed up for anything, but I started like marathon training, and then I had quite the year.
Yeah, it was rough.
So both of my parents died 2 months apart, which was pretty horrible, so I was in the middle of marathon training. And then I was like, I can't run this marathon, I'm a hot mess.
Yeah.
So I stopped training. And then once like all that passed, then I was like, I'm going to run that marathon. Which like I was in no emotional place to run a marathon.
Physically and emotionally not the best
Not
idea.
a good idea. So I was mad because I was in like, I think I was in really good shape actually at that point. Like I had been doing 8-minute like 20s, 20 milers, and like I was actually, before this all happened, I was in really good shape. So I signed up for Chicago because that was my goal.
What was cool about that one too, just like Philly, we had a good like club crew
it was really
there,
fun.
which was kind of fun.
Yeah, and it was nice too because I knew I had a guaranteed entry because I qualified for my time at Philly. So it wasn't like I don't know if I'm gonna get in, like.
Right.
So I was like so pumped. So we like bought tickets and everything, and I trained really hard, but I knew like emotionally it wasn't a good thing for me. So I was like, but I already signed up, we already bought tickets,
we gotta go.
So I still did all the training anyway, and like my training cycle was actually pretty good. Like I still ran, because my goal was to try and get those darn 6 minutes to Boston qualify.
Right.
So I still did have 20s at qualifying pace, and I felt pretty good, but my runs were very up and down because I think emotionally I was very up and down. So that was really tough. So then we went and ran it, which I probably shouldn't have. So if you ever feel like you shouldn't do a race, just don't do it. Like, it's a marathon. Like, it's a long race. So I should have known and should have not done it. But we went anyway, and I think it was like real hot that day. So if I remember, it was like 80 degrees, I think. And I remember like this was a horrible idea too. So I worked the day before the race. So we flew in after working all day, and we got there really late. And then I don't think I ate well, if I remember correctly. And I remember feeling like real dehydrated. So I had gotten to the race, and we got to the start, and I had another issue, like we got there, but we still gave plenty of time, but then I still didn't like make it on time, and the porta-johns, I don't know if there wasn't enough, or the lines were really long, or whatever, so that was an issue. And I remember like feeling like not prepared, like I felt at Philly, just because emotionally I was in a different spot. So that was tough. And it was really hot. So I got to the start, and my goal, of course, was to Boston qualify.
Get that baby.
Yeah. So I was really hard on myself, too, which was, like, probably not the best thing at that point. So
I would say the first goal of a marathon is to get across the finish line. Actually, to get to the starting line first, then the finish line.
But that wasn't my goal. My goal was to qualify. And I knew, like, qualifying, I had to be 5 minutes faster.
Mm-hmm.
So for me, it was like 8:12 place. So my goal was to be like 8 or sub 8, which is pretty brutal.
That's pretty quick, yeah.
So, yeah, which I knew I had done in Philly, but that was a much different situation.
Mm-hmm.
So I didn't care, and I was going to get that BQ. So I went out of the gate, and it was pretty rough. It was hot, and I was dehydrated starting, and it was rough, and I was really nervous because I knew, like, I didn't feel great, and I was, like, I didn't eat well the night before. It was just not a good start.
Yeah. So
we started, and it was hot, and so we went through mile 1, and my watch already wasn't working because of the buildings, and I have not had great luck staying with pacers. Like, they're either too fast or too slow or whatever. So I knew my only hope from the start was to stay with the pacer. So I stayed with the pacer, but there was, like, a huge cluster with the pacer.
Yeah.
So I remember, like, staying with them, and then
those clusters can be tough because everybody's jammed up. You gotta watch your footing,
right.
Which takes,
and
like,
I remember, like,
energy.
and I remember feeling like I was going to trip, and we were really close, but I remember the pace, too, when I finally got my watch back, but it didn't work for a while. Like, the pacing was off, and I just wasn't feeling good, and I was having, like, stomach trouble, and so I knew by, like, I think it was mile 8, I felt really pretty bad, and then I was like, I realized at that point, like, it just wasn't going to happen, and I was, like, not in a good place, and so I was really frustrated because he, like, flew all the way to Chicago, and it was awful. So I kept running, and I slowed way down, and I was like, my goal is to finish, and I kept trying to, like, pull it together, and I knew it wasn't going to come together. So I remember, like, I was trying goo, I was trying to drink everything, and I remember I was pretty sick. So I think it was mile, like, 16. I knew I was in trouble because I think one of the officials or someone at the race said to me, they were like, "Are you all right? Like, you don't look good." And I was just trying everything, and nothing was working. So I think it was, like, mile 17 I saw you, and I knew I was in, like, big trouble. So I was like, I'm just going to call it and enjoy my time in Chicago. So I did.
And I thought that was the best decision.
For me, I was emotionally destroyed. But, you know, it happens, and I at least got to enjoy the city and have a good time, and I'll definitely get back out there. I don't know that I'm going to try and BQ. I think I might just fundraise.
Just finish, right?
Because the training cycles are so grueling, and to try and run that pace is, like, so awful.
Right.
So I don't think I want to do that again.
There's also, like, some new additions to your life.
A child,
yeah. So
that's a lot different.
That will alter your training plans for sure. So you mentioned the child. So did you run before, like, when you were pregnant with Miles? So we'll just fast forward a little bit, right? You finished Chicago. Awful. Whatever.
Worst race ever.
I'm sure you had some training and some races in there in the middle. But then you have baby showing up. You're pregnant. Are you still gonna train?
Yeah, so I definitely ran through Miles' pregnancy. Kind of funny. So I think it actually wasn't super long after Chicago. Like maybe a year later. It wasn't too long after Chicago. So I was in, like, really pretty good shape, and I was, like, running, like, 5 days a week, and going to yoga, and going to run club, and doing all those things. So, of course, I'm a very determined person. So I remember when I got pregnant, I was like, I'm just going to be super fit. I'm just going to do what I was doing, which was not the best idea. Because I wanted to maintain my fitness, because I thought that the more fit that I was, the easier it would be after, which is not necessarily the case. So, like, I had been doing, I think, 13, 16-mile runs, like, when I first, like, right before I got pregnant. So that pregnancy, I had done, like, I was still doing 13s and 10s, because they found out I was pregnant in July. And so I was doing all these, like, really long runs, and I was still trying to run fast, which wasn't smart because it was hot. So I still was running, like, almost every day, or 5 days a week, 6 days a week, and then going to yoga and strength training. And then, I think, I hit a point where I realized that this is really different.
Mm-hmm.
So, I needed to change things. I needed to, eat more food and drink more water and kind of listen to my body a little bit more. Because I think I was, 3 months pregnant. And it was because I got pregnant in July, I think. So then August, it was tough running in the heat. That was really hard. So I used to have to bring water and go a little less and go a little slower, which was helpful because I had a training partner and she was like, "You need to slow down."
Yeah, that's
so that was good because otherwise I would just try and keep going.
Yep.
So that was good. And I was still doing 8 miles, pretty high mileage at that point. So I realized that I couldn't go quite so far, and I had to make sure I had bathroom breaks everywhere.
Yeah.
Because later on it gets to be a problem.
Yeah, I can only imagine.
Yeah, so I think it kind of hit me when I did the
Ocean Road
Ocean
10K?
Road 10K, because I think I used the bathroom 3 times at the 10K. And I had to be run a lot slower and take my time, and it was a very different race experience because I wasn't really racing.
Yeah.
And I was still trying to figure it out because I didn't want to push it too hard. But then at the end I went pretty fast actually. I mean, I was pretty happy. So I did that, and then I kept running races anyway, even though I was real slow.
That's alright. Just going to have fun.
But it was fun. It was nice, and it just kept motivating me to get out there. And then I think I hit a point where I should have probably done less mileage. I was still doing 8s and stuff, and I was definitely almost 30 weeks pregnant.
Yeah.
So I would definitely say listen to your body more. Than I did that time. And because I definitely was I think I was 28 weeks pregnant, and I did 8 that weekend. It was Christmas weekend or something, or Thanksgiving, and I remember I felt the baby was gonna fall out. That's what I told my doctor.
Yeah.
And she's like, "Oh, well, I think you should run less."
Yeah, maybe take it easy.
Yeah, so I slowed down and I ran less. And then I still kept having that problem. So then at that point, I realized maybe running wasn't my thing for right then.
Yeah.
So then I just mostly walked and I strength trained, and I went to yoga every week, which was really great because I found that helped me feel a lot better, and it helped. It was a prenatal yoga class, so it also helped with labor and everything because they go through, you do all the breathing and all the pelvic floor strengthening and stuff, so I found that really helpful. So I definitely recommend that, and just be nice to your body and be nice to yourself because it's a big change. Yeah, and you can't run super fast and super far. I mean, some people do, but it doesn't work for everybody. So just to be nice to yourself.
Right. Don't beat yourself up.
Yeah, and it's okay to walk and not run, or run, walk, or go real slow, or take a day off or a few days off.
Yeah.
So that's real important.
A good tip that Ray and I always talk about is just with anything, when you, because you tend to be the hardest person on yourself.
Oh yes.
Not you specific. Well, you
I
specifically,
am, so sure.
But in general, people tend to be their harshest critic, and so what we try to tell folks is just treat yourself like you would someone else that you were coaching.
Right.
Would you really be that harsh?
No.
No. So treat yourself a little nicer.
Yeah. Yeah.
So whirlwind, right? Miles shows up. Boom. Yeah. It's crazy town.
It was crazy, yeah.
Your stupid husband's going to school and working till 7 at night. So
yeah.
Not the easiest time for you, understandable. And how long did it take for you to get back into the swing of this running thing?
Yeah, so I actually was one of those crazy people that 6 weeks you can run. I was I'm going.
Yeah.
And I remember it was a pretty rough transition back. If I'm being honest, definitely be nice to yourself because I remember the day before I had him, I walked 4.5 miles, and then I had him, and I was so sore I couldn't even like walk down the street. I remember like for me, everyone's different, but like my first goal was to like walk around the block, but that was like days, weeks postpartum. Was like literally like walk the block, and then walk the block like holding the dog, and then like walk our medium neighborhood loop. And then I slowly transitioned to like doing that and pushing the stroller, and then like just walking like in general, doing like 2 miles. I remember there was one day like I went from like a half a mile to like a mile and a half or 2. Like I finally just like felt better. And then 6 weeks I got cleared to run. So you have to be smart. Of course, me. I was like, I'm going to do 3 miles. That's easy. No, it's not.
It's not easy.
So I went into 3 miles, and I, like, walked home, and probably should have called the taxi. Horrible idea. So then I realized that wasn't working.
Right.
So I had to start over. So I started with like a mile running, and then like slowly added in more and more.
Gotcha.
And I was real frustrated because it took me a lot longer than I had thought. Because I ran so long before, and realistically, like it was 2 years ago, so by that point I had been running for 14, 15 years.
So you thought, like, I'll just hop right back into this.
Yeah, because, like, really, like, I just, this is horrible, too. Like, I'm not good at taking time off. Like, I just always want to run. So I'd never really taken time off.
Right.
Like, I remember in college we took, like...
2 weeks?
I don't think I did. I think I took, like, a week. So maybe I've taken, like... 3 weeks off, like over 14 years or something.
Not
ideal.
You want to take some time off.
Yeah. So I think for me, like I don't know what it's like coming back, and I just always thought to myself, like I'm just gonna avoid that, so I'll just keep running.
Yeah, I never have to come back.
So I never come back. So this was my first real like comeback, and it's rough.
Coming back's rough, especially after
having a baby.
Giving birth.
Yeah.
I hear it's pretty rough.
It's rough. So I definitely be kinder and take more time and be a little more balanced too. Like I remember for me, like really trying to focus on like the strength training and going to yoga. I remember actually yoga was much harder for me than running coming back, surprisingly. Like I thought it would be easier, but that was really hard. And I actually went to pelvic floor PT, which was really helpful. So that's definitely a good thing to consider if you need it. Very helpful. But it was definitely a big transition. Plus too, like if you're breastfeeding, that's a whole nother thing, because then you're figuring out like when you have to pump, because you have to pump before you run, and then like if the baby's hungry on the run, and if you're bringing bottles, and then the whole like, I remember that was like a huge thing for me was when we figured out, I forget how old he was, but when we could run with him, because we used to run together a lot, and I remember that was one of the things I really missed, like when I had him and I was cleared to run, I had to like run alone all the time. It was kind of lonely, which is probably best for coming back, but for me, it just was lonely. And so I remember when I got cleared to run with him, it was really nice because we could run together. And then that's a whole nother transition because he could only run on like flat surfaces. And then we had a transition where he could run on roads, and so that really changed like my whole running routine. And then like when you could run with him, and like I would take him to run club and run. So it really changes things a lot.
When did you find, like, how far after giving birth did you find, like, okay, I feel like my old self, or does it never feel like your old self again?
I mean, it's just different, I think. So, I mean, it definitely took me a lot longer than I had thought. So I think coming back after him, it took me like a long time to just run 3 miles comfortably. So like a lot longer than I had thought. So I think it took me actually like 3 months, like post 6 weeks, to feel 3 or 4 months, because I think it was fall.
Yeah.
Plus, it was really hard coming back in like the hot summer weather. That was rough.
Yeah, that's tough.
Because it's always tough anyway.
Yeah.
And then I was struggling trying to get my runs in. So, I mean, really, I think it took like a solid year to feel like I could run faster and I was strong enough and I could do workouts if I wanted to. So it definitely took a while. Yeah.
Yeah, and so that kind of brings us to present day. So you have the baby, you get back running, you're kind of feeling confident. Then a pandemic happens. So you go from having like all your friends to run with, you know, you're really big with like running with your pals, to having to run by yourself. How has that impacted your running?
Yeah, so that's definitely tough. Yeah, so I think like, I mean, for me, like I'm pretty disciplined, so I think that doesn't affect me as much as some people. That's a good question. I mean, it's definitely tough. Like for me, like I miss going to the gym and taking classes and doing those kinds of things. That's really hard. And like I also was really regimented, like in that every Wednesday I'd go and run with friends. But it's definitely tough not having that. I mean, for me, like I'm usually pretty motivated, so I can kind of like, I don't know, like I have you hold me accountable.
Yeah.
And like one running friend I meet with occasionally, so she holds me accountable. So I think that that's important.
Yeah.
I've also done some of the virtual races, so that's been good. But it's tough.
It is, yeah.
And I know everyone says how tough it is, and I miss running races, and I miss running with friends, and I really miss going to classes, and my yoga studio actually shut because of the pandemic, so that's also really hard because I've been going there for like 10 years. So that's sad. So it definitely takes discipline, and I just know that there's light at the end of the tunnel. Right. And now I'll be able to run with friends hopefully soon.
Yeah, the pandemic is it's like a marathon, right? We're probably mile 20 at the moment. But yeah, we'll get there. Well, cool. Thanks for coming on the old podcast here. This has been fun.
It has been.
Yeah, and thank you all for listening. Again, thank you, Christine, for coming on. Really appreciate it. And remember, folks, to keep running, because it's good for you.
Take a deep breath here. I'm feeling a little stressed.
Don't be stressed. We're just two people talking about running. That is it. I'm just going to ask you questions, and you just answer them as best you can. All right. You ready? Okay.